to make sure we're going live. Okay, I'm here with Mike Kennedy, our newly elected state senator. Sorry, that was me bumping the table with my leg. There's no more way.
Come on, man.
Trust me. Uh-oh. It's the big one.
Well, I'm in a good spot here.
Yes, we are in a good spot. So anyway, Mike is a dear friend, and I am so delighted that he got elected in the special election. Let me just ask him, for those of you that don't know Mike, just give yourself a little bit of your background.
Yeah, thanks.
And I didn't figure out how to do it, so I saved you the embarrassment, but I watched this really fun video where you're dancing. And you have got moves.
No, you don't want to see
that's
that.
on Facebook Live.
It was fun. It was that's funny because that is a part of me. I like to dance since I was a kid. Never had any formal training, but I grew up near Detroit, and there's a certain foundation of danceable music there.
Yes.
And so that video that you see, and it's out there.
Was that your wife? That was. It was your kids and your wife.
My children, actually. My wife doesn't like to dance as much as I do. So
that was your daughter that was doing the.
Yeah, and kind of on the audience side, that was moments after we got destroyed by Senator Mitt Romney on the election, and essentially go to the corner and lick your wounds, or you can celebrate with your friends. Which we had a good food spread out there. We were in a nice location, and we had a music set up that we just dance your night away. And then
I was actually there that night.
I appreciated you being there, and frankly, we were all disappointed in the outcome, but. It's one of those. There's usually a winner and a loser to a race, and in that case, I was a loser. So it happened.
You know what? Maybe you were the winner in the end.
Washington D.C. has some serious problems. I think we can all see that there's some big issues there. But So background on me: I grew up in Michigan. Went on a mission to Arizona, Tempe mission. So that was back in 1988, and so that was my first exposure to the West. And grew up pretty close to Detroit, Michigan. And so I did school for a couple of years in Michigan, then came out to BYU for my final 3 years, and then went off to medical school at Michigan State University as my state of residency, and then came back to go to BYU for law school at that time. And since that time, Utah has been stuck with us, the Kennedys, and got married while we were at BYU. And it's been a real privilege to be here in this great state with great neighbors like you. And to love and serve the people as a doctor, as a professional, but then on the political side, and I think we understand each other, we'd love to do what we can to help society and all the people in our population move forward in a positive direction. So for me, I'm thrilled to be back in the state legislature. There's ample opportunity to try to make a difference for good, because there's a lot of stuff going on that's not good. But so thanks to all those supporters out there that helped me along. And this fine fellow is one of those who helped to make the election happen. That we won this time, which we're pleased to have that outcome.
Yeah, as was I. Now, I'll tell you, one of the things that I've heard from Mike, and it stuck with me, I drove up to the Capitol with him once when he was serving as state rep. And one of the things that he mentioned as we were talking, he said, there are very few God and the devil issues. Most of them, everybody's trying to do something good, and you figure out what is the best you can get on consensus, because it's not always black and white. And so I love that everything's not God and the devil. And in today's world, sometimes it feels that way when you watch the news, and they kind of highlight the more polarizing things. But,
yes.
There's a lot of work that gets done between people with different points of view.
It's true.
And I've applied that here in the city, that we're doing things, and no matter what you do, somebody is not going to be happy, right? and I think at a state level, it's the same, right? And
it is the same.
And so I really appreciated your perspective. And the other thing that it's really frustrating when you're not in government, and you want something done, but Mike has always been slow and methodical. Let's look at everything and make sure we do it right.
I may not be good, but I'm so.
Well, I saw that dance video.
Sometimes I'm fast. Yeah.
But I think it's important when government acts that it does it very thoughtful,
Yes.
because when government acts,
It's true, I think.
those decisions are long lasting.
Yep.
And so I was in my prior life, and when I started work, I was a fire ready in guy. Just, okay, I know what the answer is. Do boom, done, right? Well, that works 70, 80% of the time.
And it works when you're young and you don't know what you're doing.
Yes.
You can't see the consensus building. But as I've gotten older, I just think that approach isn't necessarily so helpful for all of us to work together on the important issue.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So Mike is the kind of person that whatever his point of view, and I actually agree with him most of the time. There are probably things,
Possibly 100% of the time, but who knows?
who knows? But I like when people take time and listen to all points of view, because sometimes really good ideas come out of collaboration from places that you didn't think there'd ever be a good source of an idea, right?
You're totally right about that. And actually, our east-west corridor that across the state developmental center land is a big deal, and it took many decades actually. But I happen to be there at the fulmination of that, where we're able to build the coalition and help to bring that to fruition. I'm disappointed to see that on North County Boulevard, there's a light going to go in just south of Lone Peak High School. Another light that's, I'm like, oh, I did that light, so now traffic, I'm going to have to stop another light other than going down North County Boulevard. But nonetheless, that was a good example. And I'm pleased to have worked with you and other mayors associated with the progress on that road. And I think the developmental center in Highland City, I think Cedar Hills, and ultimately the people are going to benefit by that process. But it was slow. It was methodical. And I think ultimately we got a pretty good outcome.
I think we got a really good outcome. Maybe things could have been done a little bit differently, or but at the end of the day, it's going to be a good thing. We actually, one of the scary things that most people may not know about was back in 2008, the county approved the road and allocated funding. So MAG allocated $4.2 million.
Big piece of money sitting there.
And it sat there for years, but by the time we ended up building it, it was going to cost more than 10. So we had to go back to MAG this year, early in the year, and get them to approve another $6 million. And thankfully, we had been talking about this for a long time, and the technical advisory committee was behind it, MAG was behind it, and all of the mayors in the county knew about it. So it was it passed with not much discussion because it had been discussed for so long. But that was kind of a scary thing, to ask for more than was originally allocated. And they do have money, and they plan for contingencies like that. So
excellent.
That was kind of a scary ask.
Well, it's funny you say that, because now that I'm in the senator spot, is infrastructure is a big deal. And I've been hearing, so now talking to some of the representatives that are good friends of mine that after I left, they're still there, and I'm able to rekindle those relationships. And also talking to, I had a chat with the city of Orem last night and their city council, their mayor. And there's some big projects still in the mix. So just to give a little bit of forewarning or forethought to what I'm hearing about, and just as citizens, just to be aware. First, the new temple site in Orem is a big deal. I don't know the name of that road, but if you just go south of the University Parkway, where the Walmart is and all that area, is that the temple is just a little south of there and on the west side of I-15. And that road that is heading north-south is a two-lane,
Geneva Road.
not good.
Maybe?
I think they call it something else, but Geneva Road obviously has 5 lanes. I'd have to check that, but then it funnels down after that University Parkway intersection to a 2-lane road, and then I think it opens up down Provo into another 3-4 lane road or something. So Orem was talking to me about the fact that they need a significant piece of money. The numbers I was hearing last night is anywhere from $15 to $25 million to get that expanded. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints would be interested, or they're going to be a part of that. So hopefully the taxpayers aren't paying all of that to expand that road, because obviously with the temple going in and the busy traffic there anyways, is that there's going to be a lot more traffic. And so we're already talking about the $1 billion surplus that the state coffers supposedly have. I'm sure there's everybody and their uncle that's got their fingers in that treasury bank trying to take the money out. And I just told the city of Orem, and I'll tell you, Rod, as well as others, infrastructure, the number that struck me was that if we delay, the estimated construction costs are 8% inflationary trends. So in other words, year by year, the costs go up by 8% every time you delay, which is reflected in that east-west corridor across the developmental center land. So for us to be early on in the process, and I'll just say too, it's very interesting. In spite of the fact that we have $1 billion surplus, there's talk of another $1.5 to $2 billion bond that we might take, because construction now is better than construction later. In some of these projects, you just need to get them moving. And so very interested in protecting the taxpayers' dollars, making sure that we are only doing what we need to. But there's a time and a place. Interest rates are extremely low, which is really interesting now, next to nothing at this point. Yes. And with the inflationary trends of construction, that maybe now is the time to strike on some of these projects, not waiting until later. So we're keeping aware of these kind of things, and a lot of money rolling out there, but hopefully we can. I like the idea of an $80 million tax cut. Frankly, I'd like to see more go back to the taxpayers for all the hard work and decency that they have. But we'll see. We'll see what goes on with the legislature.
I've listened to. I went to the Utah Taxpayers Association.
Yeah, excellent
meeting on Monday and listened to the governor's budget, and it looks to me like there is a tax cut that will happen. How it gets divvied up. Social Security,
I like
retired
that
military,
absolutely,
and then just general income tax cut. It sounds like we're going to get a mix of that.
After our disastrous 2019, which I was not part of that, I voted. I actually signed the referendum to get rid of that tax increase on food and all that kind of stuff. But 2019 was a disaster, so it's good to hear the legislature's on board with giving the money back to the people that originated that money.
So I heard the Speaker of the House talk and say, I don't know what it's going to be exactly, but it's going to include some or all of these.
Which I'm excited about. We should be doing that in a pandemic year. For us to have $1 billion surplus, I was shocked when I heard that. I thought we'd have a serious hole in the budget, but this is a great time for us to be looking carefully at. We will actually. Senator Andrag and myself already talked. We need to have a close look at the health department, the state health department, and as a result of that look. There's a lot of pandemic money that at this point seems to be unaccounted for as far as how it was spent. So we want to make sure that taxpayer dollars are well spent, and whether it's pandemic response or not, there's always room to improve how our state government agencies are utilizing the funds that they have. And that's our job as legislators, is to make sure that your tax dollars are carefully considered. I consider them sacred funds. And for us to make sure that they're only going to projects that are absolutely needed, and keep the taxes as low as possible, and only use that money for things that are going to make the biggest difference in people's lives.
So you got some committee assignments, and I think you got a leadership.
Not leadership, not yet at least, but so I'm chair of Health and Human Services, which I'm
chair of leadership.
If that counts, I don't know. Happy to do it. Thanks, Rob. That's nice to. But so HHS chair. I'm on judiciary and law enforcement as just a member, and then the hardest one, but I love it, is social services appropriations. And frankly, so I served for 4 years on public education appropriations, which is. That and social services appropriations are the two largest budgetary components of our state budget. So, and in social services appropriations, it's Medicaid, and it's the disabled, the state developmental center. So it's a big piece of money. A lot of it is federal government pass through, but in addition, there's a lot of money that moves into that appropriately. So there's a lot of important needs there. So those are some of my assignments that I have. But no, I'm not the whip or the assistant whip or anything like that, but anyways, happy to serve.
For me, chair is a big deal, right?
Happy to do it too, because one of the things I'm interested in is how are we, whether you're pro or against vaccines, and I'm good with either way. I think people's choice is a key component of that. Is what's going on with the vaccine distribution? Because I was frankly shocked that I'm seeing in my medical practice people that are young and healthy being offered the opportunity to get this coronavirus vaccine. And I'm like, are you 80 years old? Are you emphysema or COPD? Why are you getting? You're only 45 years old and you don't even see coronavirus patients. So anyways, it's what we likely will do in the first week of the session or two is to bring in the institutions, including the health department, as well as the healthcare institutions, including Intermountain and University, et cetera, to talk about vaccine distribution, making sure it's equitable and that
it goes to the people that need it.
People that need it, instead of just, I understand they open a file and, oh, well, what we've given it to everybody that signed up. So calling the clerk who doesn't even see this young, healthy person, let's give them the vaccine before it goes to waste. Well, I'm not a fan of wasted vaccine, but can't we get it to my 85-year-old patient who has deep-seated needs instead of giving it out to people just because they happen to be a clerk at the hospital? So we're going to ask those questions of the leaders of these organizations as well as the state health department to make sure that if people want the vaccine, they have it available.
And so you would never support a mandate for
No,
vaccines?
absolutely not. Thanks, Rod. And I think that's really an important part is big people can make big people decisions. And for me as a government leader or as healthcare people to try to mandate or force people into healthcare decisions, I don't think it's appropriate, even in the state of a pandemic.
Okay. Well, you just made my wife really, really happy.
She's an outstandingly thoughtful person, and we need to get together with your wife and my wife because my wife Katrina is very like-minded.
Yes, we've had some chats, and it was like,
I didn't know she thought that way.
Yeah. Like, oh, okay.
Well, my wife Katrina is outstanding, and she's very thoughtful, and I know your wife is as well.
Well, we sure appreciate that. Let me check. No questions. I would ask. Let's see. Can I tell how many are watching? There are 4 watching.
Hey, everybody.
All 4 of you. There will be more that watch later.
Wish I could buy you some cookies.
Crumble cookies.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, by the way,
that was delicious, wasn't it?
We were away, and we came in.
Oh, no.
A week old.
Was it sitting on your porch?
Yes. I heard that they were coming.
And I was pecking at it or whatever.
No, they just were a week old, but they were still.
Man, those are good, aren't
they? They are.
That was a lot of fun.
And my wife was so disappointed. But she loved your campaign. She loved the prescription thing. She wanted me to tell you that tonight, that your campaign was really nice.
The personal touch is really important to me, and that's one of the reasons why I support the caucus system is that so in that campaign for this position, there are 316 people, delegates that I had to reach out to, and it's a privilege. They're all smart, capable people like your mayor here, and in that case with 316, you can have that personal touch. I try to go to their door, knock on their door. I called every single one of them. Many didn't answer, and then bad phone numbers or whatever. But I wanted to talk to each of them and sort through their issues and just tell them what I thought about things and see if it matched. But when you're dealing with a primary where it's tens of thousands of people, it's much more difficult to have that personal touch. So it's all money and commercials. And so I'm a fan of the caucus system. I've always been a fan. I think these delegates are outstandingly thoughtful, and they vet those candidates. They vetted me thoroughly. I feel like they strip you down to the bones. I mean, they just know through and through who they're getting from this.
They ask very pointed,
difficult questions.
Hard questions.
Some don't, but some it's like you're on the griddle and you're being fried for a few minutes while this person's asking all these questions. And I love it. Frankly, if you can't answer those questions, I don't know why you're trying to serve the people. So in that case, it was a great privilege to have cookies individually delivered by volunteers to everybody's door and just say to them that I care about you and I want to reach out and make sure that I'm invested in you.
Yeah, and so like our precinct chair, Wendy Hart, was one of the people that asked a lot of questions. I saw the email that she sent.
She is a thoughtful lady.
She, former school board member, so she has some opinions on education, which are well-founded. And she asked a lot of really tough questions of all the candidates. So she sent the list. I saw that and I go, oh yeah, those were really good questions.
You can't get by Wendy Hart without having to talk about some important issues, making sure that she's comfortable with where you're at.
So I am going back to when you ran for state rep. Something you said triggered it. And I remember I'm home in the afternoon. I don't know what day it was, probably a weekend. And somebody knocks on my door.
I remember that day.
And opens it up, and there stands Mike. And and we have a dialogue.
And I can remember Rad's like, well, who's this guy on my doorstep?
That's not far from the truth.
I think you invited me in though at that point.
Yeah.
You told me about Ken Ivory and Where's the Line and how you helped him organize and put together a booklet. And I'll just say, your mayor's been invested. He was born invested in this process. But I remember that encounter, and it was one of the, wow, these are really good people. And I loved it, even though it's difficult to be on
knocking out
somebody's
a
doorstep.
stranger that you have no idea.
Hi, I'm candidate so and can I get your vote? Like, well, who are you? I mean, it was good.
Well, and at that point in time, John Dougal hadn't announced that he wasn't.
That's right.
So you were going up against
very naively and stupidly, but I think he was going to destroy me. But ultimately, he moved on to something else.
Yeah. So it was inspired, and I think I might have even mentioned that you're running against.
Probably did.
So just I
remember.
I am not shy with my, but I try to be honest with people and say, look, here's what you're facing, and here's challenges. I try not to be mean about things, but
no, you're always extremely kind and compassionate.
Yeah. So I have this picture in my mind of the first time I met you. You were on my doorstep, and you could have been one of those door-to-door salesmen, right?
I remember that day. It's so funny.
Anyway,
well, here we are years. I mean, that was 2012 probably.
Yeah.
And so 9 years later, and here we are still friends, even better friends. I know you a lot better now, and just still have a deep respect for where you're at with things. Thanks for not slamming the door in my face.
Well,
that was probably I deserved a slam in the face.
No, I was thinking just what you said. Like, here's this naive person that seems really good-hearted and wanting to do the right thing.
No way he's going to defeat.
And
how dumb is this kid?
What? And then it worked out, and you won.
That's funny.
And it was you were an excellent rep. So
I've been stunned, Rod, and I'll just say on that, our people, so Highland, Cedar Hills, Alpine, that's who I represented down, and now I'm moving into Pleasant Grove and Linden and a piece of North Orem. These are really outstanding people. I mean, whether they're delegates or not, I've been impressed and heartened by the fact, and this brings me to Washington, D.C. and what a disaster is going on out there on multiple levels, is Utah is well suited, not because of its amazing geography or its natural resources, but because of its people to meet the challenges of the future. And I feel that not just in our area, but also as a U.S. Senate campaign candidate, is I met people all over the state, and almost without variation, these people are thoughtful, decent, hardworking people, and they know what they should and can do for themselves and for their communities. And so I just have a deep belief that we're going to be okay, even though there's chaos, dismay, and destruction all around, it seems, based on what we're presented with, that we're going to be okay because we watch out for each other. I don't care who is your neighbor or how you perceive them, but people around here are concerned about the future, about our children, and about each other, and we protect and watch out for each other. That's heartening and inspiring for me, actually.
Yeah, which actually leads me to something. I went through our survey last year, the city did, and replied to all the comments. I haven't actually shared that yet because there were some intervening things that happened that put priorities in a different path, but I have the data. So just so you know, I've been wanting to share that every day for the last 2 weeks. It just, things come up and I can't. But one of the things I find interesting is this chart here, and I think the same would apply to Highland and maybe Cedar Hills, is one of the questions that we have in our survey every year, and we've done it now for 5 years. This coming year will be our 6th, is how long do you plan to remain in Highland?
Well, that's a great question.
Which is indicative of some things. And you can see, and I'll put this up to the camera, but the bottom dark green is the 20 years or more, and then the lighter green is 10 or more years. Is that right? 10 to 20 years, and then gray is 5 to 10, and then black is 0 to 5. So you can see that the vast majority of people who live here plan on staying here for at least 10 years. And more than half or this is 20 year plus. And for
We
me,
live in a great
that's
place.
rest of my life. type
Amen to
of thing.
that. Yep.
So they are invested in the community
Yeah.
that we live in and trying to make it better. So that, when you're not just here for a year and then gone, you care more about where you
I
live
think so.
and what happens.
Yeah.
And so Alpine, I'm sure, is very, very similar.
Yeah, I don't know that we've done a survey like that in Alpine, but I feel that as the people in our community are invested in the long term, not just the short term. So that's verified with that data. That's excellent.
So that's, in fact, you can take this back with you if you
Nice.
want.
Yeah.
Because it's nice to see it, not just 1 year, but like trends over 5 years. So you'll get that. But I think it's good that we have somebody that, how long have you lived in Alpine now?
So we moved there, I think 2003. I'd have to check. So we're 18 years in the area. And I prior to that, we've never lived this long anywhere because we were in school and kind of transitioning from one place to the other. So we're really grateful. In fact, one of the reasons why we came to this area is my former mission president. my wife was shopping at Costco in Orem and bumped into him. He didn't know who she was, but at the time we were looking for a house, and my wife's, you're Mike's mission president. And his eyes kind of glowed. Oh, Mike Kennedy, So anyways, she came home and told me she'd seen, his name's President Woolsey. He's dead now. His wife died as well, both great people. But I said to her, where does he live? And she said, Alpine. I said, well, that's a problem because that's where all the rich people go, and I don't want to live in that place. But okay, well, let's go look. So odd as it is we moved in just a few doors down the street from my mission president, and then I was able to. It's a bit of a story, but I was able to watch over those two as they completed their life's mission. And Sister Woolsey just died this last year. And it was a great honor and privilege for my children to come to know these great people that served me so well as a missionary. And then I was able to help both of them in some life-threatening circumstances and just be there. I remember one time Sister Woolsey called me, and she's a kind of a frail voice, and she called me. I was just eating my cornflakes in the morning at breakfast, and she said, Mike, can you come over? President's really sick. So I came right over and helped shepherd him into the ambulance and get him off to the hospital. And he was that close to dying, and she just needed somebody to be there at the time. So it was one of those. I'm a bit of a mission president stalker because I found out where my mission president lived and I moved in down the street. But it was a great thing for my children and my family to come to know those great people, and those good people are replicated on multiple levels with many other good people in our community. We live in a blessed area. It's true.
There are a ton. And I know people can get a little bit agitated when something affects them directly, because sometimes, like when you build a road or somebody develops a property, it impacts the neighborhood, but it's just roads, we need them.
Yes.
Or it just doesn't work. Right?
Yeah.
We can't. If we didn't have a really good interconnected system, it would take us hours.
Which is a reminder, and it's true, is that Orem City also talked about 1600 North in Orem, which if you're coming from State Street heading towards I-15, anybody that's been on that road, it is a problem, and they're looking at a fair piece of money that needs to be allocated for the purchasing of the homes along there so they can widen that road and get that.
Now that's the Home Depot road, right?
Yes, and so in that case, that's another component that I think we do need to do something, but sometimes you need to buy out houses and move through. And I'm not a fan of eminent domain, but I'd also say there are times where the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and paying fair market value, if we can try to appease and meet the needs of these individuals so they're not too negatively affected. But that brings to mind there just are occasions where we have to move ahead on these kind of projects. So yeah, there's a lot going on. It's all very interesting. I think you might have a question there though.
Let's see. So Cindy Pagan, is there still talk of locking everyone down again once Biden takes over? At our state, that's not.
Nobody that I know of is talking about that, but I'll just say first, if you're trying to lock down, you can't do that without the governor's permission. So anything, as far as I can tell, looking at the world, is anything unless President-elect Biden calls out the national troops and enforces this with his own muscle and might, is he would have to essentially deputize state forces, our state law enforcement or our state militia or however it might go, to enforce national mandates. And I'd like to think, and let's all as people work with our governor in a collegial, professional fashion to make sure that we as a people are the deciders about how we want to move ahead on these kind of lockdown mandate sort of things. But obviously, President-elect Biden has been a lot more aggressive on trying to prevent coronavirus spread than President Trump was. And what I struggle with is, how's it going? It's worse now than it's ever been. And we knew in the wintertime it would be worse. My wife and I kept talking about it while I was a regular citizen at that time, how summertime's the time to get sick, when you can be outside and kind of be away from people. And we were locked down through look, I don't want people to get sick, but also.
Now you did get COVID.
I had COVID in late October. Started with symptoms on Friday night into Saturday, and on Sunday I taught a elders quorum lesson, which I don't know if it was any good, but I taught it. And then Monday through Friday I did telehealth, meaning I still tried to see my patients through virtual mediums like this. And then Monday was back in the office with a stuffy nose and feeling a little bit tired, but they authorized me to go back as wearing a mask and all that sort of thing. And so my whole family got it too. And we're grateful to Heavenly Father that nobody got terribly ill. And I recognize with empathy and sympathy, there are definitely terrible consequences from this. But I've been frustrated with the efforts to try to reduce the spread of a virus when those efforts aren't going so well, even though they tell us that they're supposed to go well. And there's a lot of reasons possibly for that. But in that case, I just say, if President-elect Biden's going to lock down the place, better have great evidence of what's going to make a difference there. And also, let's work with Governor Cox and his administration and the legislature to make sure that we are doing it in an effective fashion that doesn't infringe on people's economic or constitutional rights, which I'm deeply invested in protecting.
So, and my sense is, for the legislators I've talked to, and I actually have spoken, and I text with Governor Cox occasionally, and he's not, and he wants, like, for example, with vaccines, he wants people to get vaccines, but only the ones that want it. He's not interested in a mandate.
I don't think we should force people to do things.
And so that's not coming. And I know I've heard people be worried about things like that. I think, you can't be certain 100%, but I'm pretty confident that in Utah, like you said, we're going to weather this much better than other states. And in fact, on Monday, President Stuart Adams,
he's our president
of the Senate. He went through some statistics and pointed out that the mortality rate for Utah relative to COVID, and that's of the cases that have been identified, is 0.5%. Nationally, I think the average is 3 something. It's way higher. And then he also pointed out, and I've looked into this as well, that he had an estimate of 1.7 unknown cases for every one known case. And so he said, if you factor that in, then the mortality rate
is even lower.
And then if you say, okay, if you're under 65, it becomes minuscule.
Yes. Which is why I want to make sure that those elderly people that want to get the vaccine, let's get it out as fast as possible to those individuals who are highly more significant at risk. But in our family's case, I was the only one that was tested out of, I'd have to count them up, my daughter, my son-in-law, her baby, and so on. I was the only one tested positive. The rest of them didn't even get tested. So it's like 11 that were sick with only one that was tested. So our numbers for positive cases is far undercounting, because I do have a lot of patients that I'm not getting tested. What's the point for that? It actually doesn't change my treatment patterns for them. And so with that, I think there's a much more significant number of infected individuals than what we actually count, which would lower significantly the mortality rate. But anyway, it's a serious issue. I think Utah's done a pretty good job. We've made some mistakes, but at the same point, we've done better than California and New York by a a far stretch.
Yes, I agree.
And I'm grateful
100%.
for that. These people are amazing.
Yes, but on the news, people watch and they talk about California and New York and Illinois.
And I say, why would anybody want to live there anyways? I've always, this place is a great place. If you like living in a place like that, good luck. But this is one of the not great reasons to live there, because there's just issues in those states. And I hope that they do better. It's a sad thing. At the same point, I'm grateful to live here and support the people that are our neighbors.
So there are issues besides the pandemic that we
I
face.
agree.
Water is one.
Yes.
Do you know what the discussions in the legislature
I
are
haven't heard
around
anything
that?
specific. Margaret Dayton, Senator Dayton, was outstanding with water issues. As we grow, and growth is our biggest challenge. It's a great challenge to have, but it's limited by our capacity to have water. With the $1 billion surplus, though, there is talk of our dam infrastructure, and it's fun to be able to say the dam infrastructure and so on and so forth.
Right.
The dam water and all that kind of stuff. My kids like to make fun of that sort of thing, but the dam infrastructure, the dams are getting older and they need to be refurbished. And so for us to put in to make sure that we're stable on our reservoirs and making sure that the dams are not going to have issues in the long term. But is there a way for us to develop our water resources? I'm always looking into that. I understand the developmental center has some significant water right resources, and for us to be careful about that. So no, I'm not aware of any, besides that, any particular water issues, but water, electricity, roads, making sure the sewers are working fine. These are fundamental components of government, whether it be county, city, state. And I'm invested in making sure it's working not just now, but also for generations to come.
Okay, and I'll divert to a city-specific issue. We had last week's council meeting. The city engineer came and spoke with council and said, "We have a problem." And for us, it was real serious. I'd heard about it that morning. So we have 5 culinary wells in Highland that are available to us. So these are the ones that feed the system that we use to drink and shower and shave and the other things that we do with water that we consume, except for pressurized irrigation. That's a separate system. So we have 5 wells. One of them is a smaller well and really can't support the city. It can supplement it. There are 2 that we use primarily, and then there are 2 others that are backups for us that could, in theory, support the system. So one of the wells of the 2 that we use, that we alternate and use, has had a problem for several months, and its production has declined, even though we know there's sufficient water down there. So they had finally diagnosed it and were getting ready to order parts to repair it. And they're like 95% sure they know what the problem is, and they're working on it right now as we speak. Well, on December 30th, one of our water people noticed the other good well that we have was starting to vibrate. The casing was starting to vibrate. And they brought somebody in to look at it that's an expert. And that day, they got the report, and it said, "This is going to fail in weeks."
Oh, no.
So we needed to authorize an emergency. Because it wasn't on the agenda within 24 hours, the council couldn't make a decision, but he wanted to apprise us of that and say, "Hey, we're ordering parts and we're getting stuff so that this can be fixed." And then he said, of the 2 remaining wells, one of them, the way the well was dug, there's a cascading effect for water before it gets into the system, and it makes it cloudy. So he said, if we turn that on, our water will be cloudy. It'll still be good, but people will be concerned. And we wanted to avoid that. The other well that had sufficient pipe and a pump to really supply us, the aquifer has dropped below that well. And so it's at about 600 feet. We need to go to 1,000. So that's over $1 million project.
Yeah, I bet.
That's
for all of them, or just one
just
of
for
them?
that one
Mm.
to go to 1,000 feet from about 500-600. So we will be planning for that because water is just it's not optional. Right? Meanwhile, the other two wells one is getting fixed and the other is scheduled to get fixed. So if those of you that are listening, if you want to include that in your prayers, that those pumps will survive until we can get them fixed and that they won't fail. But it does mean that this was really scary for me when I heard about it. Okay, what are we going to do? And we need to be proactive here and not wait till things fail.
Is there excess water in Alpine or Cedar Hills or Lehigh? Because I understand some of Alpine's water actually goes to Lehigh. So can you borrow water resources
the systems
from another?
aren't connected. That's the problem. So I think we'll be okay because our worst case is we're going to have to use this water from the Condy well. And if we do end up doing that, don't worry about it. It's good water. But I could envision a worst case scenario where both those fail. That one is marginal, the Condy water, and then we need to bring the supplemental well online, which would cover us. But what happened if there was a problem with any of those? We would, we'd be bringing in water buffaloes. We'd ask residents to reduce usage, but normally if I hear that there might be a water problem, I'm filling up my bathtub. I'm making sure that maybe I'm buying water barrels. So it's like toilet paper, right? I mean, who would have thought that with the pandemic, the one thing that you couldn't get for any amount of money was toilet paper? I would have never imagined that. But so don't panic, anybody. We have a plan B and a plan C, but just be aware that we're going to be looking at how do we fund this kind of stuff. Another thing that might impact us, and this is a legislative issue, is right now it's in the court. So in Highland, we voted when we needed to fix our roads because the money we were getting from the gas tax was just not enough. We went through the route of trying a property tax and then trying a fee, and both of those were referendum. Then we did a second opinion, like you need to go for a doctor, and then came up with a plan. And then when we went to the residents with, okay, this is exactly what we need to do. This is how much it's going to cost. You can pay for it with a fee or a tax. The residents, and we did a survey, we had meetings, and I think it was 60-40 preferred the fee. And they preferred the fee primarily because they wanted to make sure that if they were paying for something, they were getting it. Yeah. So the fee is like an insurance policy. Okay, the government's going to get it, but it's going to go to this thing, not anything else. Now the state has a property tax that you can implement that functions the same way. It didn't have that at the time. A fee can also be sunsetted. So fixing our roads, there are two parts to it. One is maintaining the roads that we have that are good, and the other is fixing the ones that are bad, getting them into a condition where they can be maintained. And because we hadn't maintained them well, it was going to be kind of expensive to get them back to good. Once they're good, then you still need to maintain them, but the cost isn't as high. So that was a $7 million, $8 million project to make them all good. So we put a sunset clause on the fee and said, at 10 years, it expires, and then we can relook and see what we need, but we have to revisit the issue. And then we also agreed to look at it every year and make sure that we were, under, over, are we getting too much, are we not getting enough? So far, residents should feel really good that we're on track pretty much with what our plan was. But anyway, PG also implemented a road fee, and theirs got taken to court as being illegal because the argument is a fee, you can only charge a fee for what you can measure, And like if you decrease the use, then the fee goes down. Well, it went to court, the judge ruled against the city. Now it's being appealed. Once that's appealed, and let's say the fee loses, then for other cities that have a similar thing, you are now at risk if you continue to use it because there is a precedent set. And if somebody sues you, um, they can ask that the money since that court date be given back to residents.
Wow, yeah.
So you can't spend it. Now, Brady Brammer's our rep. He's a civil attorney and feels like there's a really good chance that PG will lose the case. So he is working on some legislation that says we are going to explicitly disallow road fees. But we're going to provide a runway for anybody that is using that type of fee to move it over to a tax. So give you 18 months to do it or whatever. So that money isn't at risk. That could pass this session, which means we would have to, as a city, immediately look to say, all right, let's transfer this money from a fee to a property tax. The difference will be it won't have a sunset clause, and the allocation model is different. So with property tax, the more expensive your property is, the more you're going to pay. Whereas with a fee, it's per household. So it's even per household. And we did it on a per connection basis. And it didn't matter if you were a business or how big your house was or small. We just made it even because we felt like that was the fairest thing to do. I had talked to Brady about this, and by extension, talking to you, saying, the state legislature has the authority by the state constitution to define a tax and create a tax. So my question was, well, couldn't you create a tax that has the same features as the fee? So instead of being allocated based on the value of the home and the property that you live in, can it be per household, per connection? And then call it a tax. It's just semantics, right? But now you've officially called it a tax, and then what we do works. Well, his opinion was, given the debacle that happened in 2019 that you mentioned earlier, nobody wants to touch a different kind. It's a legislative hard thing to do, but I think it's something to consider.
Yeah, right.
And depending on how the court case turns out, even if the city wins, I think it will be worth visiting as a state legislature. Say, okay, how are we taxing people? Are there some things that make sense to be taxed based on property value, and maybe there's other things that the allocation model is different? I mean, I just don't know. I just know what our residents want, and for me personally, I think if it went from a fee to a tax, I would benefit because I am below average where I live. But if you're above average, then it's not so good. So
Interesting.
It's just an issue that I'm bringing up with you.
Yeah, thanks. And Pleasant Grove was talking to me about this too. As you know, they've been sued, and so I'll talk to Representative Brammer because he's got some legislation. I'm taking a different tack on a similar issue. This is a good example for the listening audience of 3 or 4 people, which welcome and we're happy to have you.
Actually, we're 7. We were at 8 at one
almost
point.
Doubled, but
yes.
Anyways, I'm glad we're so entertaining. But along those lines is when it comes to this is how do we end up helping to move things forward, but we're not constantly taking these people's money. And I didn't know Representative Brammer was working on that, but I am working with Pleasant Grove on some of those issues to make sure that roads are fundamental to what government should be doing. But as a good example is it's not God versus the devil with this. It's kind of how do we make sure we're respectful of the people's tax dollars, but at the same point we keep our community functioning in the way that it should. So that's really interesting. Thanks for that background. I'll talk with Representative Brammer about what he's working on, make sure we're working in concert, so it's working for the people.
Yeah, so I understand Brady's perspective because he wants to help protect us in the event that court case loses, because my understanding is that once an appeal court rules, then it's effective immediately.
Well, and the liability of all that money going back possibly with interest to people that's a
we would have to put our
issue.
road projects on hold basically until we could figure out how to do that. Now, we also recently implemented a public safety fee. And Alpine, they did a tax increase, property tax increase. We went with a public safety fee. Again, same kind of rationale. Talk with the residents, see what they wanted. Some percentage said no increase whatsoever.
Yeah, sure.
And then some said, okay, fund it with a tax or fund it with a fee. And it was, I don't know that it was 60-40, but I still think it tipped to the fee because people feel like, again, it's a fee. I get reminded. For me, you see it every month.
Yeah, right.
And for me, the other advantage of the fee is if I don't pay my property taxes, over time I can lose my home.
Yes.
Right? If I don't pay my fee, the city's going to turn off my water, but there's actually a lot more help available when you need your basic utilities to operate, like people that will, and organizations that will help you. Not as many if you can't afford to live it, because the answer is, well, just if you can't afford it, move. Yeah. So
that's not helpful.
No, I hate moving.
I agree with it too.
I hate the packing. It just is. And you end up doing things to make it nicer, and then thinking.
And then you're moving out.
Why didn't I do this 10 years ago?
And then the people move in and they tear up everything
right,
you
did
that you thought was nice, and they didn't want it. And it's kind of ridiculous.
So anyway, it's just one of those things. But so there are some other advantages to fees that are different than property taxes. But it's one of those things. It's not God and the devil. It's just different points of view. But the thing with nobody wants to pay more taxes, and I think, and I'm included in that mix. But our property tax system in Utah is one of the best in the nation because it does not index for inflation. There's no inflationary component. If your house value goes up 100%, your tax rate goes down 50%, right? So the amount of money that a city or school district or county extracts from that home doesn't really change until the taxing jurisdiction says, you know what, we need more money.
Truth in taxation.
And then you propose a tax increase. The county then determines how that change will affect every resident and sends them a notice. And then you have a public hearing, truth in taxation hearing, where everybody's had the chance to review how that change affects them. And some people don't like it. I am perfectly fine with it. I think it's great. And I think it forces you to say, here's what we need, here's why we're doing it, and then residents can see the impact. Now, with a fee, you don't have to wait for the county to figure it out. You've set the fee, you know why, how much people are going to be impacted. So the reason there's a delay, and it's called specifically truth in taxation, is because you have this county component that has to figure out how it impacts every home. In the case of a fee, we have a public hearing, but we can do it immediately. So you have a public hearing either way.
Well, I appreciate your stewardship of people's dollars, and it sounds like you have a great mayor. He's working really hard to make sure everything's working well for you. Good luck on that water issue. That's a big deal.
Yeah, our guys are not sleeping at night.
I have like 4 big barrels of clean water in my garage if you need any, or if anybody else needs any. And I don't think I'll be needing it anytime soon. We don't have any snow that we can melt, sadly. But anyways, let me know if you happen to have
if I call you and say, hey, start filling your tub.
I have a good barrel full of water. just
Okay.
fresh from a few months ago.
So, but anyway, don't panic. We're kind of having fun with this issue because it's a serious issue, and we need to think longer term on some of our other wells that it's silly to me. We have a well and it can't produce because the water table's dropped.
$1 million to fix that is a big deal.
Yeah, it might be as much as $1.5 million. It's more than $1 million.
Can I ask you, our time's short, what do you think about the impeachment, second impeachment of Donald Trump today?
Okay, so I think it's just a personal, you're trying to destroy an individual. I don't know that if it accomplishes anything good. So to me, it's about, he's gone in a week.
They can't even try him until after he's out.
There's, to me, I just think it's kind of productive.
Very interesting times we're in. I was not surprised that they would do this, but it's disappointing to watch the.
It is disappointing. The riots last week were terrible, wrong. Just like the riots this summer.
Absolutely.
And the attacks on the federal building, and when Judge Kavanaugh was, they stormed the banged on the doors there. It's all bad. I just don't like contention. But to me, this is stirring the pot.
It is, and it's not making it better. But there was an election, was stolen, constant drumbeat since 2016 from the Democrats that Donald Trump stole this election. He's an illegitimate president. And guess what you're getting on the other side is even more vigorous. An election was stolen. And I just think
it's a negative spiral. You got to stop it.
If we can't have confidence in one another and in how our institutions work, then the very foundations of what's happened in our society is challenged. And so I sorry to see the state that we're in. And frankly, if the Democrats continue this kind of behavior as far as impeaching the president and so on and so forth with what they promised, I think we may find a serious reckoning that nobody's planning for. So I hope that our national leaders can act more like our local, including leaders like you, as well as our county, and I'd like to think our state leaders, that we can work together on these kind of things instead of just sticking people in the eye regularly about whatever they're disturbed about. So we'll see how this goes, but I have full confidence in you, Mayor Mann, and I appreciate all you're doing.
And likewise. So we're down to 5 minutes. We'll start to wrap things up. Are there any other questions? We're back up to 8 now. Any other questions for myself or Mike, Dr. Mike, or Senator Kennedy, whatever?
Just Mike is fine.
Whatever works. Feel free to ask. I think if you look at Utah, who we want to win don't always win. I mean, I can look back on the candidates that I've supported, and I would say to anybody that wants my endorsement, it's a mixed bag. Right? The guys I support probably most often don't win. So, but you know what? I get over it. I just assume good intent and then work within the system to get stuff done. I think that's what you do. In Utah, we do that well. I'm in meetings where used to be monthly in person. Now it's monthly Zoom. And with all the mayors in the county, and they are by and large really actually not. Oh, they're great people. They're doing it, and no mayor is getting paid anything. And our state legislators, it's not just that really intense 2 months.
It's a lot more than that.
It's all throughout the year. There's special sessions. There's interim discussions, so that it's not just a couple months. And if you look at the dollar per hour, it's just it's service. It's just service by law.
Change per hour, yes.
It's not much. I calculated it once.
Not good.
It's not meaningful, and you could double the salary and it wouldn't matter, right?
It is an honor to serve, and I know you and I feel the same. As we are certainly not in it for the money. We're in it because we love serving the people and trying to help things move forward in a positive direction. So thanks for being that kind of person, because if you're in it for the money, you're going to be sorely disappointed and leave pretty quickly.
And I do hear occasionally from residents, so corruption at the city, I don't see it. There's just not enough.
I've not seen it either, Ron. I hear that too, and maybe in Washington, D.C., but I'd also say there's a lot of decent people in Washington, D.C. on both sides of the aisle as well. So I give people the benefit of the doubt until they prove that they can't be trusted. And I think generally my experience with people, it's been impressively honorable in most people's cases when I see them in state as well as national leadership. We had a chance to learn. Burgess Owens gave a speech this last Saturday at the Eagle Forum meeting that I was at, and meeting with John Curtis, Mike Lee. When I won my election, both John Curtis and Mike Lee called me personally just to say congratulations and thanks. And these people have a lot of things to do, but the fact that they would reach out, I just think, regardless of whether we agree, these are honorable people in the vast majority of cases, and let's work together on the things that we can to fix problems. There's plenty of problems to fix without making more problems.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I inherently, anything that's negative, I want to shy away from.
Good for you.
There's a lot of things to be happy about, right?
I agree.
A lot of things are positive. And look at the mountains that are here.
They're beautiful.
Look at your neighbors and how they've cared for each other. And there's even a positive side to this pandemic. Like, okay, now we know that we can do things remotely that we maybe
never would have done before,
and never would have even tried. So we've tried some things, and I'm sure in some cases it didn't work so well, but we've pushed the boundaries, and there will be an ongoing effect of how we get things done. And so we've tried to accelerate some things faster than normal, and we'll see how that pans out. I'm sure there'll be a net positive effect on the world at the end of this.
I believe, after thinking this through, is in dark times, that's when light can shine the brightest. And we may be in dark times, I don't know, and I don't know if I am a light to be shown, but I also say that it's not. I've thought about this in multiple ways, but it's not until it rains that you know if your roof works or not as far as protecting you from leaks. And so we're in a bit of a storm, and let's see how strong we are and try to improve where we should. But I think Utah is strong, our leadership is strong, and most importantly, our people are strong, and we're in it together. So let's try to weather the storm and actually be better off at the end of this. I think we'll be good.
We will. And Stuart also mentioned comparing Utah with other states. He said New York, $54 billion deficit, California, $57 billion deficit, Utah, between one time and ongoing,
it's amazing.
$1.5 billion surplus. We might be the only nation in the state that is running a surplus during this pandemic, and it's because we were frugal. Another bit of good news for Highland is, when the pandemic came, we put the brakes on and we said we're going to slow growth, and no raises for anybody until we know. Which in October we figured out that we could do 2% raises, which isn't much, but it's something. And then we're looking at the budget right now, and it looks like we're going to have $500,000 more. We're getting $500,000 more in sales tax than we thought we would get. So we've had a 20% increase in sales tax when we thought we could get hammered.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then we had some one-time, COVID money that we've been able to utilize. And Mike, one of the things that he did when he wasn't elected was he did a walkthrough on our building when we were looking at, okay, this pandemic just got started. What kinds of things do we need to do? What kind of policies do we need to have in place? So he came through, walked through, did a report for us.
It's been a lot of fun.
And he's done that for other
COVID consultant.
Yes.
Yeah, and I love trying to advise people how to stay healthy. And at this point, I think everybody feels like or does know enough to sort of do that themselves. But that was great to give advice to the city.
He said, don't waste your money on this. That is not, because, people were doing all kinds of
Buying all
things.
sorts of crazy things. Yeah.
It's just, that's not an effective use of your dollars. So that was good advice. So I think he's going to take that into the Senate and into Utah. There's a lot of people with really good perspectives, and you say nobody, but most people are trying to be frugal.
Yes.
and conservatives pay for what they use. And if we want to lower taxes, we sometimes have to lessen our demand on what we expect government to do for us. We get all kinds of requests. Why aren't you doing this? And why aren't you doing that? Well, yeah, that would be nice, but are you willing to pay for it? And a lot of times it's, well, I want my neighbors to pay for it, right? It's just hard, right? Things aren't black and white. So like we're out. So let's see. Thank you both for your time. We appreciate what you do. Thank you, Cindy. Richard Mathis, thanks to both of you. Great for your public service. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Cindy. You guys have a good evening. We'll talk to you later. If you have any questions, you can find Mike's email.
385-268-9458 is the cell phone. So just text me or be in touch. And sadly, we just found out today, because of threats to the Capitol, that we're not, at least for the first week and maybe going forward, the Capitol is going to be locked. So public can't come, but virtually it will be available. So, but just text me if you have comments or thoughts. HB 321 is a dumb bill. Vote no. That's all I need. It's very helpful to hear from my constituents. So that's 385-268-9458. And thanks for participating tonight.
Yes, and texting is probably the best way.
It's very handy.
It's real time, but it can be delayed a bit. So phone
And
calls are nicer, but
take some time.
It does take time. So
and we don't have a lot of time up there sometimes, but looking forward to service. And thanks for all you do. You're great.
Mike is really responsive. He's always responded to my text. So don't feel shy to send Mike a text. You can send me a text to 801-318-7141. That's the number that's on our website. I try to respond. Email's easy, mayor@highlandcity.org. That works too. And then I'm in the office most days, so come in. And whether you're grumpy or not, that's okay.
Take all sorts.
Yes. Well, we all have issues from time to time.
It's hard for all of us sometimes. Yeah.
So thank you all for attending. Have a great day.
Thanks, Mayor. Good night, everybody. So, good job.